G'day and welcome to another video. In today's lesson we will learn how to make the basic hat or the basic beanie. We also learn how to make a seam that's quite invisible. We also learn how to make a hat that's going to fit every time. So I want to say a big thank you to Sylvia from our Facebook page who shared the information that she found on working out the mathematical formula on how to make your hat fit. And it's really easy. All you're going to need is a calculator. So let's get started on the lesson. So he looks a bit drunk with his hat like that. So I've just turned the hat around. See where the yarn is still attached. I haven't quite decided what I'm going to do with this hat. But see where the yarn is still attached. That is where the seam is. So you really can't see it at all. I know where it is, and once I point it out you're going to know where it is. But this is probably the best method I've found to make that seam not so noticeable. So the seam is right here. Can you see it now? Now that I've pointed it out. So let's get started and find out how to make this really basic hat with some really good hints and ideas on how to make it seamless and also get it the right size. I know a lot of people have trouble with that, including myself. So let's get started. So grabbing the yarn of your choice, like I said, I'm using Red Heart Super Saver. I'm going to make our slip knot. There's lots and lots of different ways to do this. This is how I do it. Of course you do it the way you like. So I'm holding the short piece in my hand, wrapping the yarn around my finger twice, grabbing hold, grabbing the left and then pulling it off my finger, wrapping the yarn again, grabbing the left and pulling it off my finger. Like I said, there's lots and lots of different ways. I'm using worsted weight, so I'm using a size I or a 5.5mm. If you're using double knit or 8-ply yarn, you can use a 4 or a 4.5mm hook, which is about a size G. So we're going to chain 4. You could also use the magic ring for this starting piece of our hat. We're going to chain 4, so 1, 2, 3 and 4. We're going to slip stitch into the first chain. So we're going into the chain, yarning over, pulling through, and then pulling through that side as well. Create this little tiny circle. So this step you could also use a magic ring. So if you've got a magic ring or this little chain 4 and join, what we're going to do now is chain 3. So 1, 2 and 3. Now in this hat video we are going to ignore the chain 3. Normally in most patterns it counts as your first stitch, but I found a little nifty way to make your seam almost invisible. Now if you know what I'm talking about, if you've made a hat and you've got that ugly seam, this is going to help not have that seam. And also sometimes you'll get big holes where you join. This is going to help close up those holes. So that doesn't count as our first stitch. So we need to do 12 double crochets into the center. So yarning over, going into the center ring, or if you've got the magic loop, go into the center of that. Yarn over, pull up your loop, you've got 3 on your hook. Yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So I'll show you that one more time, and then we are going to be putting 12 double crochets in. So this was our first one here. We're ignoring our first lot of chains. So yarning over, going into the middle, yarning over, pulling up a loop, yarning over, pulling through 2, yarning over, pulling through 2. So we're going to continue on. Now I'm going to assume that you know how to do the double crochet. It's one of the main stitches that we use when we do crochets, so we get a lot of practice making this project. So basically what I do is I just keep going until we've just got stitches all the way around, and then I'll count them. So we need 12 altogether, not including that first chain 3. And when I discovered this method, oh, hallelujah, it covered up that ugly seam, which I really hate. So not including this one, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I need 2 more. And what we do is normally when I make a hat, and I have it in some of my other patterns as well, we join into the top of the chain 3 up here. But in this one, for the magic to happen, we ignore this first chain 3 and we join into the top of the first double crochet. So here is my double crochet here. The top of the stitch is up here where the 2 loops are there. So that's where we're going to join. So we're skipping this whole chain 3 here, going into the top, under both loops, yarn over and then pull through, and that's joined together. So you won't really notice on this round because it's our starting round. So if you've worked over your tail or you've got a magic ring, you can pull that and pull that tight, and you can sew in the end later, or you can do it now if you like. Now we're going to chain up 3. 1, 2, 3. But just like before, we don't count this stitch. So what we need to do in every stitch around, we need 2 stitches. And 2 stitches into 1 stitch is called an increase. So that's what we're doing, increasing in every stitch. So yarn over, go into the stitch and do your double crochet. We want to put another one in there because we need 2. Onto the next stitch, 2 more. Next stitch, 2 more. And we're going to repeat this all the way around until we have 2 stitches in each. So of course technically you've got 3 in the first one, but we're not counting this, so we've only got 2. So I'm going to whiz around . So please join our Facebook page if you haven't already. It's a fantastic page over there. I've learnt so much since I've had that page. If you ever get stuck on anything, there is a lot of people there to help you. The people that are on the page are very helpful too. All the people that are the part of the community, it's great. I really do love it. We also have Ravelry and Google Plus. I'm pretty new to that, but it's so far so good. It's quite fun. Even if you just join Facebook just for the groups that are on there, I think it's totally worth it. Some people don't like Facebook, but it's very good just for the groups. So let's just make sure we've got 2 in each. So because we have 12 stitches before, and we've done 2 in each, we should have 24. Let's make sure I've done it right. So we're not counting this first one. 24. So what we need to do now is ignore the first chain 3, and we're joining in that first double crochet up here. So skipping that whole thing, going across into the top of the first double crochet and joining. So see how we've joined and there's no big gap. Now when we do our rows, we always end on an increase, like from now on, because we're going to be doing it a little bit different on the next row, always ending on an increase. Now if you don't end on an increase, you know you've done something wrong back in the row here. And if you can't find it on this row, double check the row before too, because it could have been there that you've made the mistake also. So now we're going to start our chain 3, and of course like before it doesn't count as our first stitch. So ignoring that stitch, we want to do 1 into the same stitch. Now I know it looks like we've got 2 because we've got 2 stitches, but remember we're ignoring that, so we've only got 1. So you've got to remember that, because sometimes you can get confused and think that you've done an increase where you've actually only done 1 because we ignore that stitch. So in our next stitch it is an increase. It's going into there, working 2 double crochets. We're going to work 1 double crochet in the next. In the next stitch we're going to work a double crochet. Oops. Yes, so we're going to work an increase, so we need to put in 2. So we've got 1 by itself because we're ignoring the chain 3. Then 2 into the next stitch, then 1, then 2, then 1, and then 2. So you're basically alternating between an increase and then just 1 by itself. So increase, 1 by itself, increase, 1 by itself. And you're going to repeat this all the way around until we come back to here. So when we're coming back around, remember what I said, we're going to end on an increase. Now you just have to make sure, don't go, okay, so see how we've got 2 stitches, 1, 2, don't confuse yourself and go into here, in that stitch there, into that stitch there. Sometimes it may look like it's not used, but it is. It's got the chain 3 coming out of it, we're ignoring that, because when I very first found this, found out how to do this, I kept going in there and I'd actually increase in each row and it was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Yep. So we're not going into that tiny little hole there. We're only going into the tops of the double crochet, not that last stitch. So putting that back on there. I just did an increase, so it's 1 into the next one, and then increase into the next stitch. So we're going to join, ignoring the chain 3, going to the next double crochet and joining, let me see if I can point this out better, joining into the top of the double crochet, which is here. Not, normally you'd go here, not that, we're going into there. Oops, into there. Now once you've done this a few times, and probably by the end of the hat you'll know exactly where you're going. Because if you go in here, you're actually going to add a stitch to the next row. So we're doing a slip stitch to join. See how there's no ugly seam, there's no ugly hole. Yeehaw. So next row, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and that's the one that we always ignore. Poor thing, there's not much love in this pattern. So we're going into the same stitch with a double crochet. So before, on the previous row, we did 1 stitch by itself and then a double, an increase, 2 double crochets. So on this row we're going to work 2 stitches by themselves and then an increase. So we're ignoring that chain 3, remember, so that's 1 by itself. In the next stitch we're going to work another one. So you've got 1 and then 1. In the next stitch we're going to work an increase, so that's 2 into the same stitch. In the next stitch we're going to do 1. In the next stitch we're going to do 1. In the next stitch we're going to do 2. So we've got 2 there into that 1 stitch, 1 and then 1, and then our increase. So in between each increase, which is here and here, we've got 2 stitches by themselves, and we're going to repeat that all the way around And as we go along, each row gets more and more between the increases. So we just did an increase, so our next one is 1 by itself. And the next one is 1 by itself. Excuse me while I grab some yarn. So we had increase, 1, 1, and then increase. And we repeat this all the way around, remembering we end with an increase. If you haven't, make sure you check your stitches. And don't worry, I've done that plenty of times. Not paying attention. So we've done increase, 1 by itself, 1 by itself, increase. I'll show you one more time and then you're going to repeat this around. So we just did our increase, so it's 1 by itself, 1 by itself, next stitch and increase. Okay, so we're going to repeat that all the way around until we get back to the beginning. So I've just done my increase, 1, 2, and then an increase. Then we're going to join to the first double crochet, not the chain 3, so we're skipping that. We're going into the top of the first double crochet with a slip stitch. This is what we've got so far. Now, can you see the seam that's noticeable? No. Woohoo! I mean, if you know where it is, it's there. But seriously, that's a lot better than what I've seen some hats that I've made. Now, how do you know if your hat's going to fit? Now, a lovely lady on my Facebook page shared this formula with me, so I'm going to share it with you because it's awesome. So what it is, excuse my scribble, circumference. You measure across the hat and then you multiply that by 3.142 and that equals the circumference that the hat's going to be. And I've just made some notes down the bottom. These are in centimetres. Just write that there. So newborn's about 34 centimetres, 3 to 6 months, 6 to 12 months, 12 months to 3-year-old, a 3 to a 10-year-old, a teenager, and then the adult. Mine's about 58 centimetres. Smaller, like female heads, are about 56. 58 to 60 is normally for a man's size. And don't forget they stretch a little bit too, so you've got a little bit of playroom there. So let's measure across the hat. Tape measure. Now I'm going to use centimetres just so that, I mean that's what I use. If you want to use inches, go for it. So we're measuring across. So across the hat is 14 centimetres. So grab your trusty calculator. 14 centimetres times 3.142 equals 43.988. So it's 43 centimetres, 0.98. So it's basically almost 44 centimetres. So if you need your hat to fit 44 centimetres, this hat is going to fit a 6 to 12-year-old. If you're using worsted weight, I'm using worsted weight for this. If you've used 8-ply or double knit, of course it's going to be smaller. So what we need to do is we need to increase until we get, and when we use that formula, until we get the size that we need. So this is going to fit a 6 to 12 month old, and I've done 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's just measure 3 rows across and let's see how much that would fit. So I'm just measuring, oops, 3 rows. So that's 10 centimeters. 10 centimeters is 3 rows. So I'm just doing this for fun, just to see what it comes up with. So what was it? So it's 10 centimeters times 3.142 equals 31 centimeters. So that's going to be a smaller than a newborn. So to get all your different sizes, what you may need to do is use a different size hook. Now there's no exact science to hats, and trust me, this is the most commonly asked question. If you need to make it smaller, use a smaller hook. If you need to make it slightly bigger, you need to use a bigger hook. Because in between, like when you measure the rows, you'll get like an in-between size that you won't be able to get to. So if you can adjust the size of your hook, then you can adjust the size of your hat. I hope that made sense. So this hat is going to fit a 6 to 12 month old, but I'm going to do another row so that you can see how to do another row of increase. So of course we chain up 3, but we don't pay any attention to him because we need to go into the same stitch and do a double crochet. So that's ignoring chain 3, 1 by itself, 1 by itself. And in the previous row we did 2 by themselves, didn't we, between the increases. There's an increase here and an increase there, so it's 2 by itself. So this row we need to do 3 by itself. So that's 1, 2, 3, and then increase in the next stitch. So any row after this, you add 1 stitch. So this row had 3 in between, the next row will have 4 in between, the next row will have 5 in between. So we need to do 1, 2, 3. So increases here, so that's 1, 2, 3, and then next stitch is an increase. And we're going to repeat this all the way around. So we've just done our increase, so it's 1, next stitch, another 1, next stitch, another 1. So we've done 3 by themselves and then an increase, which is 2 in each stitch. Just need to undo my jacket, I'm getting hot, hang on. Alrighty, so now we've done our increase. 1, 2, 3 by themselves, then an increase. So repeat this all the way around until we get back to the beginning, remembering that we end on an increase stitch. So I'm up to my last stitch and we're going to work an increase. And then we're going to join, ignoring Mr. Chain 3 and going into the next double crochet. So let's have a look at our hat. I'm going to measure this again. Just grabbing my tape measure. It always falls on the floor. I'm going to measure across That's 17 centimeters now. We've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows. So, oops. 17 times 3.142 equals 53 centimeters. So that's basically going to fit a head at about 53 centimeters. So that's sort of a teenage size up to an adult size. Now I'm going to finish that. That's going to be enough increasing for me. I don't want to make this for an adult, so I'm going to leave that like that. If you need to do another increase round, you're going to work the same method, but instead of having 3 in between each increase, you're going to have 4 in between each increase. Now, I was going to say something and now I've gone completely blank. Oh, wait, that's what it was. If you're making something, and so say the last round was too small when you measured it, and then this round is too big when you measure it, what you can do is go down a hook size. I mentioned that just before. So, because sometimes you'll make it and you'll get in between sizes and you won't be able to figure out how to do it. So you could use a smaller hook with the same yarn, and that will give you a smaller hat. Or, just to really confuse you, if you're a beginner, this may not make any sense at all, but if not, it may. You know how we sort of do our increases like every so many stitches? What you could do is like skip one of the increases. So still come around and do 1 stitch, but don't do an increase, just do 1 stitch, and then do your next increase. So you could do, say when you come around, say there's 1 here and 1 here, skip that one, so just do 1 stitch, and then do an increase here, skip the next one, do 1 there. So it's kind of a bit of playing around to get the exact size hat. And sometimes it can be extremely frustrating, trust me. You know, just because I've had a lot of experience, nearly 12 years worth, hats still frustrate the life out of me. So there's no exact thing, and then you'll use another different yarn and it'll be all different again. Because as most of you will know, different yarns are different thicknesses. So once you get your crown of the hat, so this is basically the top of your hat, it may start to curl a little bit. It may curl a lot more than that if you've used a smaller hook. It may even lay flat. Mine can lay flat because I've got loose tension, and that's why it's a little bit loose, so it's laid flat. So if it's laid flat, it's perfectly fine. What we need to do now is make the sides of our hat. Now Bev's Country Cottage has a size chart, so if you Google Bev's, B-E-V-S, Country Cottage, they have an excellent size chart that I use for the length that we need to make the sides of the hat. If I remember, I will put the link below, down in the description box, and you can go and check out how long you need to make it. So now what we do is we're doing 1 double crochet in each stitch, but we still need to work that chain 3, because remember we ignore that and we go into that same stitch. So that actually looks like an increase, doesn't it? But because we ignore that on the way back, it's not actually going to make it any bigger. So work 1 double crochet in each stitch all the way around until we get back to the beginning. When we come back around, we're going to, well, I need to do 1 more stitch and then we're going to join. And see how there, sometimes it looks like you need to put a stitch in there, but you don't. It's coming off the top of the chain 3, so if you can remember that, at the top of the chain 3 stitch we don't go into, we're only going into the double crochet stitches, because from now on we don't do any increases, and if you accidentally go into that stitch there, you're going to make an increase and your hat's going to gradually get wider. And I did do that when I very first learned this method. Couldn't work out why my hat was still getting wider. So we're going to skip the first chain 3. So we're skipping this one, going into the top of the double crochet under both loops, and then making a slip stitch. We are going to repeat that last round until we have the length of our hat. So it will gradually, that row just then, or the next row, may even take another one, to start curling up. Now if you find your hat's not curling up, then there's something obviously wrong. It could be that your hook is way too big for your yarn and it's too loose, and that's not helping it come up like that. But once you get the hang of hats, you'll be right, trust me. Doesn't take a lot of practice. And sometimes you'll make a complete failure, and you know what? We have all done it, so it's perfectly fine. You only get to see the good ones that I make. You should see some of the shockers. They never made it to the public eye. So now all we're going to do is repeat that last round, remembering to chain up 3, going into the same stitch, making sure you go into the same stitch, not the and then going around and getting like so. Now don't panic if you haven't seen my engagement ring, it's getting cleaned. It's still all good, we're still together, it's just getting cleaned. Thought I'd make a video, and I just realised I'm not wearing my ring. So one stitch in every stitch around, come back, ignore your chain 3 and join into the top. So I'll meet up with you when we have our length. Like I said, if you need to use the Bev's Country Cottage link, they have great hat size charts there, and use that as a guide. After you've made quite a few hats, you probably won't even need to use it because you'll know what you're doing. So happy crocheting until we get to the end of our hat. When we come back around, we're going to, well, I need to do one more stitch and then we're going to join. And see how there, sometimes it looks like you need to put a stitch in there, but you don't. It's coming off the top of the chain 3. So if you can remember that, at the top of the chain 3 stitch we don't go into, we're only going into the double crochet stitches. Because from now on we don't do any increases, and if you accidentally go into that stitch there, you're going to make an increase and your hat's going to gradually get wider. And I did do that when I very first learned this method. Couldn't work out why my hat was still getting wider. So we're going to skip the first chain 3. So we're skipping this one, going into the top of the double crochet under both loops, and then making a slip stitch. We are going to repeat that last round until we have the length of our hat. So it will gradually, that row just then, or the next row, may even take another one, to start curling up. Now if you find your hat's not curling up, then there's something obviously wrong. It could be that your hook is way too big for your yarn and it's too loose, and that's not helping it come up like that. But once you get the hang of hats, you'll be right, trust me. Doesn't take a lot of practice. And sometimes you'll make a complete failure, and you know what? We have all done it, so it's perfectly fine. You only get to see the good ones that I make. You should see some of the shockers. They never made it to the public eye. So now all we're going to do is repeat that last round, remembering to chain up 3, going into the same stitch, and then we're going to put one stitch in every stitch until we get back to the beginning, slip stitch into the top of the double crochet, continue on until we have the amount of rows that we need. Thank you for watching my video. Hope you enjoyed the lesson. Please share. Can you see that ant crawling across on the ground? Please share your recreation on our Facebook page, and if you don't have Facebook, we also have Google Plus and Ravelry. Or if you like, you can email me a fail of your creation to the email address in the description box below the video. So until next time, happy crocheting.